The Vexarian ambassador's cub just declared war on itself, and High Commander Tvek has 40 seconds before it triggers the station's automated defense grid. Emma looked up from her coloring station in the human daycare wing, hearing the emergency klaxons 3 levels above. The announcement crackled through every speaker on diplomatic station Theta 9, delivered in the flat tone that meant someone was about to die. All personnel evacuate sectors 7 through 12 immediately. Vexarian juvenile in combat state. Lethal force authorization in 38 seconds. She was already moving, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor as she sprinted toward the central lift. The other human staff members called after her, but Emma had worked with scared kids for 15 years. She knew that sound, the particular frequency of a terrified child's cry, even when it came from a species that could tear through reinforced steel. The lift seemed to take forever. 20 seconds now. Emma jabbed the emergency override, and the acceleration pressed her against the wall. Through the transparent sides, she could see other species fleeing in every direction. The Gellian diplomats with their crystalline bodies refracting panic in rainbow patterns. The Torvan ambassadors abandoning half-finished meals, their multiple limbs tangling in their haste. The doors opened to chaos. The observation deck had been cleared except for Tvek, who stood frozen 15 feet from the window wall. His scales, normally a calm blue-green, had shifted to the deep crimson of Vexarian combat stress. Beyond him, pressed against the massive viewport, a juvenile Vexarian, maybe 4 feet tall and built like a compact tank, had locked eyes with its own reflection. The cub's bioluminescent patterns pulsed in rapid sequence across its scaled body. Each pulse triggered a roar that made Emma's teeth ache. The sound wasn't just noise. It carried a frequency that made the station's energy shields flicker and the lights dim with each blast. 15 seconds to lethal authorization, the AI announced. Tvek! Emma shouted over the noise. Move aside! The High Commander's head whipped toward her, his vertical pupils dilating in shock. Human Emma, you must evacuate. The cub has entered war state. It will kill anything that approaches. Even I cannot. Yeah, I got that part. Emma was already skirting around him. But that baby's not in war state. It's terrified. 10 seconds. The cub roared again, and this time the viewport cracked. Hairline fractures spiderwebbed across the reinforced material. In the reflection, another cub roared back, patterns perfectly synchronized. The juvenile's claws extended, 3-inch razors that could shred Kevlar, and scraped against the window, trying to reach its perceived enemy. Emma, stop! Vexarian cubs are apex predators. During rage response, they cannot distinguish between threat and help. Yeah, I know. Emma kept walking, forward, her voice dropping to the calm, firm tone she'd used on hundreds of panicking 5-year-olds. Hey there, sweetie. Hey, it's okay. You're okay. 5 seconds to lethal force. Tvek made a sound like grinding metal. The automated systems will fire plasma charges. You will both die. Emma reached her jacket, a ratty cardigan she'd worn for 10 years of teaching, and held it out. The cub's eyes snapped to her, breaking contact with its reflection for the first time. Its luminescent pattern stuttered, confused. Weapons hot. 3 seconds. Emma, please. She threw the cardigan over the viewport, blocking the reflection. The material settled across the cracked surface, covering the cub's view of itself. The roaring cut off mid-blast. Silence dropped across the observation deck like a physical weight. Weapons holding, the AI said, sounding almost confused. Threat frequency has ceased, awaiting command authorization. The cub sat down hard, its legs giving out. The combat patterns across its scales flickered, then faded to a confused swirl of pale yellow and white. It looked at Emma, then at the covered window, then back at Emma. A small, questioning chirp emerged from its throat. Oh, honey, Emma said, taking another step forward. You just got scared of your own reflection, didn't you? Tvek's translator struggled with her tone, somewhere between sympathy and exasperated affection. Emma, you cannot approach further. When Vexarian juveniles experience fear, their hunting instinct activates. It will perceive you as prey and... The cub chirped again, louder this time. Its head tilted, studying Emma with eyes that held the same confused fear she'd seen in countless human children facing their first thunderstorm or dark closet. "Station security to observation deck." A new voice crackled through the comms. "We have lethal response teams in position. Clear the area so we can neutralize the juvenile threat." "Belay that!" Tvek snapped, his voice carrying the weight of command despite his obvious terror. "No one fires. The human is attempting an unknown intervention protocol." Emma knelt down, making herself smaller, less threatening. The cub tracked her movement, but didn't advance or retreat. Its breathing came in short, rapid bursts. The universal sign of a panicking child, regardless of species. "You've never seen a mirror before, have you?" Emma kept her voice soft, conversational. "Where you come from, there's nothing that shows you your own face. So when you saw yourself in that big window, you thought it was another cub, and that scared you." The juvenile's patterns shifted to pale blue. Confusion, Emma guessed, though she'd never studied Vexarian color language. It chirped a third time, and the sound cracked in the middle, almost like a human child's voice breaking on a sob. That decided it. Emma closed the distance in 3 quick steps and wrapped her arms around the cub. Tvek made a sound like his translator had, short-circuited. "No, that's impossible. You cannot. It will activate combat reflex and tear you." The cub pressed its face into Emma's shoulder and began making a sound she'd never heard before. Not a roar, not a chirp. A deep, rumbling vibration that she felt more than heard, resonating through her chest. Its scales, which had been rigid with tension, softened and warmed under her hands. "Station security, be advised," someone said over the comms, voice tight with disbelief. "The human is... she's holding the Vexarian juvenile. It's not attacking. Repeat, the juvenile is not in combat state." Emma rocked slightly, the automatic motion of anyone who'd ever comforted a frightened child. The cub's weight, easily 200 pounds, didn't bother her. She'd lifted playground equipment and carried sleeping kindergarteners. This was just another scared kid who needed to know they were safe. "There we go," she murmured. "See? Nothing to be afraid of. That was just you in the window. Just your own reflection, honey. It can't hurt you." The rumbling sound grew louder. The cub's small arms, still tipped with those lethal claws, wrapped carefully around Emma's waist. Not grabbing, not clutching, hugging. Tvek approached slowly, as if moving through deep water. His scales had faded from combat crimson to a pale, shocked gray. "This is not possible. Vexarian juveniles do not have a calm response to non-parental contact. Their biology does not allow... well, this one does." Emma adjusted her grip, supporting the cub's head the way she would any child. "Though I'm guessing you guys don't do a lot of hugging on your homeworld." "Hugging." Tvek repeated the word like he was testing it for poison. "I do not know this term. The translator provides images of restraint, grappling." "Not restraint. Comfort." Emma looked up at him over the cub's head. "Physical reassurance. We do it with human kids when they're scared or upset. It helps them feel safe." The High Commander stared at her for a long moment. "We do not touch cubs during development phase. They are isolated until reaching maturity. It is the way of our people. To touch a developing juvenile is to risk triggering territorial aggression." "Yeah, I'm starting to see the problem with that system." Emma kept rocking gently. The cub's breathing had slowed, deepened. The rumbling sound continued, steady and calm. "How old is this little one?" "5 cycles, approximately 3 of your years." Tvek's voice carried something Emma recognized, the careful neutrality of someone whose entire worldview was cracking apart. "This cub is the offspring of Ambassador Vel, who is currently in treaty negotiations and could not attend to the emergency. So you just leave your kids alone? For years? It is natural. On our homeworld, juveniles develop in solitary caves until reaching hunting age. They require no contact, no..." He gestured helplessly at Emma and the cub. "This behavior is not documented. in any Vexarian development study. Emma felt the cub's grip tighten slightly at Tvek's agitated tone. She adjusted her humming, an old lullaby her grandmother had taught her, melody without words. The cub's scales shifted to a soft lavender color, and its breathing evened out further. "That's because you're doing it wrong," Emma said, keeping her voice gentle to avoid upsetting the juvenile. "I mean, no offense, but if your kids are raised in complete isolation, of course they're going to freak out when they see their own reflection for the first time. They don't have any context for it." "Human Emma," Tvek said carefully, "are you suggesting that Vexarian child-rearing practices, developed over 3 million years of evolution, are incorrect?" "I'm suggesting that evolution on your planet didn't include mirrors or windows or any other reflective surfaces, so your kids never needed to learn that thing in the glass is just them." Emma shifted the cub's weight, settling it more comfortably against her hip. "But out here, in space stations with viewports and polished floors and observation decks, yeah, you might want to update your approach." The cub made a soft sound, halfway between a chirp and that deep rumble, and snuggled closer. Tvek's scales rippled through 3 different colors in rapid succession: shock, confusion, and something the translator didn't have a reference for. He stepped closer, studying the juvenile in Emma's arms with the intensity of someone watching their entire scientific understanding collapse in real time. "The cub is producing a contentment frequency," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That should not be possible. Vexarian juveniles do not experience contentment until after their first successful hunt at age 7 cycles. Well, this one's pretty content right now." Emma swayed slightly, the motion automatic. The cub's eyes had started to droop, its luminescent patterns fading to a barely visible pulse. "When's the last time anyone held this baby?" "Held?" Tvek's confusion was genuine. The cub was removed from its birth chamber at hatching and placed in developmental quarters. Standard protocol. No physical contact is initiated until— "So never," Emma interrupted, feeling her teacher instincts kick into full protective mode. "You're telling me this child has never been hugged, never been comforted, never had anyone just hold them when they were scared?" "There is no word in our language for what you are describing." Tvek moved closer still, his massive frame towering over Emma, but his posture uncertain, almost hesitant. "We provide nutrition, environmental stability, educational access. Physical contact during development triggers aggression response. It is documented across all Vexarian studies." "Your studies are wrong." Emma adjusted the cub again as its full weight settled against her. It had fallen asleep, the deep rumble now a soft, steady purr. "This baby isn't aggressive. It's exhausted because it just spent who knows how long in a complete panic state with nobody to help it calm down." The observation deck's main doors hissed open. A Torvin security officer entered, all 4 arms holding scanning equipment, its compound eyes taking in the scene with obvious bewilderment. "Hi, Commander. We've cleared the adjacent sectors and established containment fields. Should we proceed with juvenile extraction and sedation?" "No," Emma and Tvek said simultaneously. The security officer's antennae twitched in surprise. Tvek continued, his voice tight with something that might have been fear. "If we attempt to remove the cub from the human's grasp, it may trigger reactivation of combat state. We do not understand what is happening here. Until we do, no one touches either of them." "But sir, protocol requires—" "I am creating new protocol." Tvek's scales flashed deep crimson for a moment. "Command assertion. Post guards at all entrances. No one approaches without my direct authorization, and contact the Vexarian High Council immediately. Tell them we have an unprecedented biological event in progress." The security officer hesitated, then bowed and retreated. Emma looked down at the sleeping cub, its small face pressed against her collarbone, claws retracted, scales warm and soft. You know what the worst part is? This kid was probably terrified, roaring its head off, and everyone's first response was to kill it. Nobody thought, "Hey, Maybe it's just scared and needs help." Tvek was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight Emma hadn't heard before, something raw and almost painful. "We do not know how to help. We have never needed to." He paused. "Will you teach us?" Emma looked up at the massive warrior, saw the genuine confusion and concern in his alien features, and felt her expression soften. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I can teach you. But first, we need to talk about why isolating babies is a terrible idea, no matter what planet you're from." Within 20 minutes, the observation deck had transformed into an impromptu crisis center. 3 members of the Vexarian High Council appeared via holographic projection, their scales shifting through agitated patterns as they observed Emma still holding the sleeping cub. "This is High Counselor Thane," the largest hologram announced, its voice carrying harmonics that made the deck plates vibrate. "We have reviewed the security footage 17 times. What we are witnessing contradicts every documented study of juvenile Vexarian biology." "Yeah, I'm getting that impression." Emma had settled into one of the observation chairs, the cub draped across her lap like an oversized, scaly cat. "So nobody in your entire species history has ever just picked up a scared kid and given them a hug?" The 3 council members exchanged what might have been glances. It was hard to tell with their multifaceted eyes. The smallest one, introduced as Counselor Bex, spoke next. "The term hug does not translate properly. Our linguists are struggling with the concept. You are restraining the juvenile, yet it displays no stress markers. You provide no nutrition, no educational stimulation, yet the cub exhibits unprecedented contentment frequencies. Explain this paradox." "It's not a paradox, it's comfort." Emma stroked the cub's head ridge, and it made a small, happy sound in its sleep. Human children need physical affection to develop properly. Touch, holding, rocking. It helps them feel secure, helps them learn trust and emotional regulation. Tvek, who had been standing guard nearby, moved closer to the holographic display. "Counselors, I have observed the humans' interaction for 32 minutes now. The juvenile's bio readings show decreased stress hormones, regulated heart rhythm, and neural patterns consistent with deep rest state. These readings are not possible in our juveniles according to all existing data. Perhaps our data is incomplete." This from the 3rd counselor, Yenna, whose scales bore the silver markings of advanced age. "We evolved on a world without reflective surfaces. Our caves had no mirrors. Our waters ran too swiftly to show clear reflections. Juveniles developed in isolation because there were no predators capable of threatening them." "But we're not on your homeworld anymore," Emma said. "You're in space now, in stations with windows and polished floors. Your kids are seeing their reflections for the first time ever, with no context, no preparation, and nobody to help them understand what they're looking at." Bex's scales rippled pale yellow. "The incident reports. Counselor Thane accessed the classified files from the past 6 cycles. A new holographic display materialized, showing a scrolling list of reports." Emma's eyes widened as she scanned the entries. 17 Vexarian juvenile emergencies across 9 different stations in the last 2 years, all involving reflective surfaces. "We classified them as equipment malfunctions," Thane admitted, its voice heavy. "We believed the juveniles were responding to territorial threats. Standard protocol was to eliminate the reflection source and sedate the cub until transport back to isolation chambers could be arranged. You've been drugging them." Emma's voice went flat, the tone she used when dealing with particularly incompetent school administrators. "Instead of comforting scared children, you've been treating them like malfunctioning equipment." The silence that followed was broken only by the cub's soft purring. Yenna finally spoke. "We did not know there was an alternative. Human, Emma. You say your species requires physical comfort for proper development. Do other species share this need?" "Most mammals do. Probably a lot of other species too." Emma looked down at the sleeping cub. "You can't develop emotionally healthy kids if you never teach them what safety feels like." And you can't teach safety without touch, without connection, without someone being there when they're terrified. Tvek's scales had gone completely gray. Shock, Emma was learning. Or maybe grief. How many? Tvek's voice was barely audible. Counselor Thane, how many juveniles have experienced these episodes? The hologram flickered as data streams ran across its surface. 43 documented cases across all diplomatic stations and vessels. Sedation protocols were followed in 42 instances. This is the first time a juvenile has been calmed without chemical intervention. Emma felt something cold settle in her stomach. 43 kids, terrified out of their minds, and your solution was to drug them unconscious. We did not understand they were experiencing fear. Yenna's scales had dimmed to almost black. Our diagnostic equipment registered combat hormones, territorial aggression markers, threat response elevation. Nothing in our medical database suggested fear as a juvenile emotional state. Because you never let them feel safe enough to know the difference. Emma's grip on the cub tightened slightly, protectively. The juvenile stirred but didn't wake, simply shifting closer to her warmth. Fear and aggression probably look identical in your readings because your kids have never learned any other way to respond to stress. Bex leaned forward in its holographic form. Human Emma, you mentioned emotional regulation. Define this concept. It's learning how to manage your feelings. When human babies are upset, we hold them, rock them, talk to them in calm voices. Over time, they internalize that comfort. They learn that scary things pass, that help is available, that they don't have to face everything alone. Emma paused, looking at each council member in turn. Your kids never learned any of that. They've been alone since birth. Tvek made a sound like cracking stone. I have served as guardian to 12 juveniles over my career, 12 cubs placed in my care during their parents' diplomatic assignments. I followed every protocol perfectly. Isolated quarters, monitored nutrition, educational programs, no physical contact. His scales flickered through rapid color changes. I have been harming them. For 40 cycles, I have been— You didn't know, Emma interrupted, her voice gentle despite her anger at the system. You were following the best information your culture had, but now you do know. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? The observation deck doors opened again. A Vexarian female entered. Smaller than Tvek, but with scales bearing the deep blue patterns of high diplomatic rank. She froze when she saw Emma holding the cub. Ambassador Vel, Tvek said quickly. The juvenile is unharmed. The human has employed an unknown calming technique that is my offspring. Vel's voice carried harmonics Emma couldn't identify. The ambassador moved forward slowly, her movements careful. The emergency alert reached me in the middle of treaty negotiations. I was informed my cub had entered combat state and required lethal suppression. Your baby was scared, Emma said, not moving from her chair. It saw its reflection and didn't understand what it was looking at. When it roared, the reflection roared back, and it spiraled into a panic response. Vel stopped 5 feet away, staring at her offspring. The cub's scales had shifted to soft pink in sleep, patterns swirling gently. I have never seen those colors. What do they signify? Contentment, Thane said from the hologram. A state we believed impossible in juveniles. May I? Vel extended one clawed hand, then stopped, uncertain. I do not know what I am asking permission for. You want to touch your kid? Emma stood carefully, supporting the cub's weight. Come here, I'll show you. The ambassador approached like she was navigating a minefield. Emma guided Vel's hand to rest on the cub's back, showing her the gentle stroking motion she'd been using. The cub's eyes opened slightly. It made a questioning chirp, seeing its parent for the first time in this context. Close, touching, present. Vel's hand trembled against her offspring's scales. I do not know what to do, the ambassador whispered. We do not have protocols for this. You don't need protocols, you need instinct. Emma shifted the cub slightly, offering it toward Vel. Hold your baby, it's that simple. If I hold incorrectly, if I trigger aggression, you won't. Look at its colors. That's not aggression. That's curiosity. Emma guided Vel's arms into position, showing her how to support the cub's weight. There, just like that. The transfer happened slowly. The cub tensed for a moment as it moved from Emma's arms to Vel's, but the ambassador was following Emma's instructions carefully, keeping the contact steady and warm. When the juvenile settled against its parent's chest, it made that deep rumbling sound again, louder now, resonant. Vel's scales flashed through a dozen colors in seconds. What is happening? The vibrations. That's purring. It means your baby feels safe. Emma stepped back, giving them space. That's probably the first time it's ever felt truly safe in its whole life. The ambassador looked down at her offspring, and Emma saw something shift in her alien features. A recognition, perhaps, or a connection forming that should have existed from birth. Vel attempted the rocking motion Emma had demonstrated, awkward but determined. The treaty negotiations, Vel said suddenly, looking at Tvek. I must return. The Gellian delegation will not tolerate further delays. No. The single word came from Yenna's hologram, sharp with authority. Ambassador Vel, you will remain with your offspring. The treaty can wait. This cannot. But, Counselor, the terms we have negotiated took months to are meaningless if we cannot properly care for our own young. Yenna's scales had brightened to determined silver. We have been operating under false assumptions about juvenile development. Every protocol, every guideline, every standard practice is now in question. Tvek, you will work with human Emma to document proper juvenile care procedures. Ambassador Vel, you will learn these techniques and teach them to the parent of every Vexarian juvenile in diplomatic service. Bex's hologram nodded. We must recall all isolated juveniles immediately. If they are experiencing emotional development impairment, they are. Emma's voice cut through the discussion. Every single one of them. You've been raising an entire generation of kids who don't know what safety feels like, who've never been comforted, who respond to fear with pure aggression because that's the only tool they have. She looked at the sleeping cub in Vel's arms. How many of your adults have emotional regulation problems? How many respond to stress with immediate combat instinct? The three counselors exchanged glances again. Thane's scales went dark. Our species has one of the highest rates of diplomatic incident escalation in the known galaxy. We are classified as volatile in 17 different cultural databases. The Turvan Federation requires special insurance for any negotiations involving Vexarian delegates. Because you're all traumatized. Emma said it bluntly, watching the words land. You were all raised in isolation, never learned emotional comfort, never developed healthy stress responses. And you've been perpetuating the cycle with every new generation. Tvek had gone completely still. The Harvest Moon incident, 63 cycles ago. A trade dispute that escalated to military conflict in less than 4 hours. We blamed the Andorian delegation for provocative language, but maybe your diplomat just didn't know how to handle being frustrated without going into combat mode. Emma finished. Yeah, that's what happens when you raise kids without teaching them emotional intelligence. The cub stirred in Vel's arms, making a small sound. The ambassador automatically adjusted her grip, drawing her offspring closer. The motion was clumsy but instinctive, something deeper than protocol clicking into place. This will require a complete restructuring of Vexarian society, Bex said quietly. Child-rearing practices, educational systems, diplomatic training, military protocols. Everything is built on the assumption that isolation produces strength. It doesn't. Emma met the holographic counselor's eyes. It produces warriors who don't know the difference between a threat and a scared reflection. You want to know what produces real strength? Teaching your kids that they're not alone. 3 weeks later, Emma stood in the newly redesigned Vexarian family quarters, watching Tvek attempt his first unsupervised comfort session with a different juvenile. The High Commander's scales flickered through nervous patterns as the small cub, offspring of a military attaché, climbed into his lap. Support the head, Emma reminded him from across the room. And remember, that rumbling sound means you're doing it right. Tvek adjusted his grip, his massive hands surprisingly gentle around the cub's small frame. The juvenile made a questioning chirp, then settled against his chest. Within moments, the telltale purr began. "I still cannot believe this is real," Tvek said, his voice soft with wonder. "4 cycles I have served as guardian to juveniles, and I never knew this was possible." "You know now." Emma smiled, checking her datapad. "And according to the reports, you're not the only one. 17 stations have implemented the new protocols. 41 cubs have been reunited with their parents for comfort training." The door chimed. Ambassador Vel entered, her own offspring, now awake and alert, riding on her shoulders in a carrying sling Emma had helped design. The cub chirped happily at seeing Tvek, its scales bright pink with contentment. "The Vexarian High Council has made it official," Vel announced. "Mandatory parental contact for all juveniles under 7 cycles. Isolation protocols have been suspended indefinitely, and they have requested that human Emma serve as chief consultant for juvenile development across all Vexarian diplomatic installations." Emma laughed. "I'm a daycare worker, not a galactic child psychologist. You are the person who taught an entire species how to hug their children." Vel's scales shifted to warm gold. Gratitude, Emma had learned. That qualifies you for whatever title you desire. The cub in Tvek's arms had fallen asleep, purring steadily. He stared down at the juvenile with an expression Emma recognized, the dawning awareness of just how much had been missing. "How many did we fail?" he asked quietly. "How many Vexarian adults walk among the stars carrying this absence, not knowing what they never received?" "A lot," Emma admitted. "But you can't fix the past. You can only change the future." She gestured to the sleeping cub. "That baby will grow up knowing what safety feels like. It'll know that when it's scared, someone will be there. That's going to change everything." A notification flashed across Emma's datapad. She glanced at it and grinned. The Torvin delegation just filed a formal request for human childcare consultation. Apparently, they've been having some issues with their own juvenile development programs. "Word spreads quickly," Vel observed. "The galaxy is watching what happened here." "Good." Emma looked at the peaceful scene. A warrior learning gentleness, a cub learning trust, a parent learning connection. Maybe other species will figure out that you can't raise healthy kids in isolation, no matter how many legs or scales or tentacles they have. Her datapad chimed again, the human daycare wing, reminding her that snack time was in 15 minutes. Emma stood, stretching. "Duty calls. Tvek, you've got this. Just keep doing what you're doing." As she headed toward the door, Vel called after her. "Human Emma, thank you for seeing what we could not." Emma paused, looking back at the Vexarian family, so different from human families, yet fundamentally the same in the ways that mattered. "That's what we do," she said simply. "We take care of kids, all kids, everywhere." She left them there, learning, growing, healing, and went to feed juice boxes to the human toddlers who were, in their own way, teaching the galaxy what it meant to be cared for. The cub's purring followed her down the corridor, a sound that would soon echo across 100 worlds.